Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I'm sending these out a couple of days early now because somebody gave me the feedback that, I've been sending them out on Friday because that's Shabbat. I do Shabbat Shalom and then, a little Torah commentary, a little Dvar Torah. But I was getting the feedback that people like to have a few days ahead of time for our Saturday morning service. When we do a Dvar Torah, we discuss the Torah. And they just want to kind of think about it, interact with it, maybe look a few things up. And then when they come to service and we do our little talk, they have questions, they have comments, they want to know a little bit, want some clarification, whatever it is. So I'm going to be sending these out like around Wednesday. So Shabbat Shalom's a little early. That's also, excuse me, weather's a little dry. You see it's getting a little warmer. So it is what it is. Of course, got my yarmulke on and now got a shirt on under it for the old seat. So really doing the whole rabbi thing now. But again, we're doing a little bit early. That's also a little bit of a plug for folks to come on a Saturday morning. And I get it, folks. It's a 2-hour service. It's usually about 2 hours and 15 minutes the way we do it. A lot of people today can't relate to the Saturday morning service. People like the idea of the Torah and studying the Torah, but what's all the other prayers? And even though we've been making a point of explaining a lot of the prayers, it's kind of long. People have a secular life that gets involved. But, we're trying to do things to make it easier and more attractive for you all to show up. So last week we had Women's Health. It was Women's Health Month at the end of October. We invited some people to come and talk a little bit about their experiences with breast cancer. We were looking for people to talk a little bit more about, any type of heart disease that affects women. Next Saturday, the 11th, is going to be, well, actually this Saturday is going to be Veterans Day. Veterans Day falls on Saturday, and we're going to try and have some active military people come and talk a little bit. Maybe we'll do prayer for the country, which we haven't really been doing in the interest of time. And let's and invite you, maybe make some interesting things. Have maybe a special kiddush. If you're going to meet, you got to eat, that type of thing. So hopefully, please make a point to make it. We'll do everything we can to make it interesting and, of course, spiritually inspiring. And that's really what it's all about, So more on that later. And I guess we got a general meeting coming up. Maybe I'll harass you about that when we come up. But this week, the portion is Chayei Sarah. Now, last week, we talked a little bit about Abraham and Sarah being barren, and they had a son of their old age, who, of course, was Yitzchak. And we didn't really get to the end of that portion. I try to keep these to about 11 minutes. But actually, we did. In fact, it's the same portion that we have for the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and we might have discussed that about a month or so ago. But basically, at the end of last week's portion, Vayera, Abraham was being tested. Now, Abraham has gone through about 10 different tests. Hashem tested him to make sure that his heart was in it, he was sincere, because, this was a big deal, starting this new concept of one true God that was above everything else, every other being that people thought were gods, like the wind, the sun, the moon, all of that. So Hashem put Abraham through some trials. The biggest trial was when he said, Abraham, take your son Isaac, your only son with Sarah, the son that you had after you were circumcised, the one true son, take him up to the mountain and sacrifice him. And of course, as he was getting ready to do that, an angel stayed his hand. They saw a ram in the thicket. They used the ram instead, and hence we get the tradition of using the shofar, the ram's horn, to do the sounds on Rosh Hashanah. Also, a lot of people don't realize this, but we also blow the shofar on a new moon, if it's not during Shabbat. Also, the month before the new year, Rosh Hashanah, the month of Tishrei, the full month of Elul, we have a special psalm that we say, and then at the end of that, we blow the ram's horn as well. So, Chayei Sarah. And it talks about the life of Sarah. It starts out talking about the years that Sarah had lived, which is about over 137 or so. And Sarah, as the portion begins, has died. Now, it's accepted among the sages that the reason Sarah dies right then and there, of course she was old and she was getting on in years anyway, but because the idea of Yitzchak, her only son, the son that she had had in her old age, had died or was being killed by Abraham without having a family, was just too much for her. And by the way, I believe that her age was 127 when she died. So think about this now. Do the numbers, do the math. Yitzchak was born when she was about 90 years old. Abraham was 100, right? She got pregnant when she was 89. That's what she was laughing about. That's what Abraham was laughing about. 99, I'm still got some virility in me, all right? And if she had died when she was about 127 or so, then the sages figure Isaac was in his mid-30s when he was led up the mountain by his father Abraham. So there's a lot of different commentaries about this, and this speaks to Yitzchak's love of Hashem, his devotion to the principles of the one true God that was being introduced to the world now, that he could have overpowered Abraham any time. He actually, according to some sages, laid down on the platform and gave himself up to be sacrificed. He was willing to do that. And of course, in almost being a sacrifice, he now had a very high degree of holiness. Some of the other sages say that when he came down from the mountain, and he was out praying, and Abraham now was going to send Eliezer, his servant, to go find him a wife so he could continue the lineage. They say that they didn't really talk very much. And they said because Yitzchak, had some resentment that Abraham was going to, put him to the knife as a sacrifice. So, this is where the sages disagree. And again, it's about Torah. The language of Torah, of ancient Hebrew, is sort of vague, and it invites a lot of commentary. Now, one of the things they do all agree on is that in the Torah, things don't just happen. There is a reason why the history unfolds. And again, Torah is not a history of the Jewish people so much as it's a history of Torah, right? So why would this portion start with the death of Sarah when the last portion pretty much ended? There was some discussion about Ishmael's lineage too, but right before that was the whole incident with the Akedah, which means binding, the binding of Isaac to be sacrificed. And it is because there's a cause and effect. They're so close together, there's a cause and effect. The sages see that. They see certain things in the Torah as the homiletic principles way to analyze Torah. And one of the principles is that if two things are juxtapositions, please correct me on the word, I'm sure there'll be some response to that. But when two things are juxtaposed the way they are, then it means there's a connection, there's a relationship. So the fact that there was the binding of Isaac to almost be sacrificed, and Sarah had heard about it, people said, hey, Abraham's going up there to sacrifice your son. It was just too much for her. In her old age, she couldn't handle it. And they're together for a reason, to invite that analysis, to invite that connection. Okay, so now that Sarah's gone, Yitzchak is going to continue the tradition, the devotion, the knowledge of Torah. So Abraham sends Eliezer back to his people, to his clan, to find a wife for Yitzchak. And Eliezer goes to his family, and he has kind of an idea in his head from Abraham. And he's got a big train with him. He's got about 10 camels, a bunch of men. He's got a lot of jewelry to offer the family of whoever is going to be Yitzchak's wife. And he goes to the well, and there's Rebecca at the well, and she sees Eliezer and offers to water him, but also offers to water the camels without even being asked. And from that, they determine that, hey, here's a young girl. Now, it's still Abraham's clan, but they're still kind of pagans. They're still idol worshippers. He knows that she has a heart that's distinct from the heart of the pagans. She's kind, she's merciful, she understands that you got to be kind to animals, and that's the sign, this is the wife for Yitzchak. So Eliezer goes, and she bargains with the family, and what's really interesting is that it's her brother, Lavan, that takes it upon himself to do a lot of the bargaining. Now, of course, in the ancient world, this is unheard of. Okay, it's the father that says, gives the okay whether his daughter or not can go off and get married. So that was Bethuel. Now, why was Laban taking the lead? Well, the name of Bethuel, her father, is mentioned just a couple of times, but it's really Lavan that takes the lead. Now, either Lavan was improper in making the deliberations, bargaining for her release to be married. And by the way, in the end, they asked Rebecca, do you want to go? And she said yes. Should we stay for the usual 10 to 12 months and prepare for the wedding? No, I want to go now. So she kind of knew something. But there's also some consideration that maybe the father had actually died for one reason. Maybe he had died prior to all this happening. So now Laban, as the oldest son, was now the head of the family. So that's why he was making the decisions. So we bring this up, all these things up, to show that there's some disagreement, and that's what we do. We disagree as to the commentary, as to the reasons of why these things happen. So, thank you very much for listening, and hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it early. Shabbat Shalom. Hope to see you in services Friday or Saturday. This weekend it'll be regular services. Okay? Thank you again for listening, and again, for the last time, Shabbat Shalom.